Hello and welcome to Meadcroft. Meadcroft is the base for Archaeology, Anthropology and Geography, and I'm going to do a whistle-stop tour of the laboratories. So I am Keith Wilkinson, I'm Professor of Geoarchaeology and I teach in Archaeology and Geography. So let's go in. So we've just moved inside the Meadcroft laboratory complex, as it were, and we are in the Archaeology Find Store area. So on these roller stacks to the left of me, we've got artefacts, bones and other materials from our last two training excavations, from St Mary Magdalene Leper Hospital, which is in Winchester, and from previous projects that we carried out in Hampshire and in Somerset. So as well as being an accredited department with the Chartered Institute for Archaeologists, and indeed geography is also accredited with the Royal Geographic Society, the department is also a registered archaeological organisation, and this means that we sign up to treat artefacts and other finds we make during our fieldwork in a particular way. And these roller stacks are one response to that, because the roller stacks enable us to store our materials in a sort of climatically sensitive way, so they're not going to decay. However, as well as just being a storage area, these artefacts are also actively used in our teaching. So we employ, for example, pottery from St Mary Magdalene Leper Hospital to teach first-year classes in quantifying ceramics. We'll use bone from, say, the Dinnington Roman Villa in order to teach second-year classes on zoo archaeology and so forth. So it's not just a passive facility, it's a facility that you would access during the course of your studies. So we're going to now move on through to the door behind me, and we're going to go through to one of the work areas, and I'll explain processing that we undertake as we go through. So we've now walked through into our processing area, and in this area we process finds that we make from our excavations. It's also an area we use for storage. It's generally a bit messy, and I could pretend that normally it's in a cleaner state than the one during the course of this filming, but I'd be lying if I tried to do that. In fact, it's always dirty. That's just the nature of archaeology and geography in particular. So we'll walk through this room and I'll try and explain what goes on in various parts of the facility. So all of these laboratories that you're looking at, or at least the first few, were built in 2008. They expanded the rear area of the Meadcroft Villa, and they were built entirely at that point for archaeology. And then as anthropology and geography have come on stream, these facilities have become available to those subjects as well. So this part of the facility is just equipped with various sinks. These sinks are sort of industrial type units. They're equipped with silt traps so that we can wash finds, wash other materials, and not worry too much about what goes down the drain. It's not going to block the drains in any way. So we've got various artefacts that are being worked on at the moment. So you can see they're very modern looking artefacts in these cases. This sort of is iron bucket and Victorian pottery. But we might be working on any sort of archaeological material, and it would get processed here. We've also got a series of storage cabinets where we keep a lot of our field equipment. On my left-hand side here, we're not going to look at any of those during the course of today's session. Instead, we're going to move back and look at this storage area. So we also have a departmental consultancy. It's called Geoarchaeology, and we carry out commercial work as part of the development process across the UK. And these are just some of the cores that we've obtained during the course of those projects in which we are in the course of analysing. And again, we've got further samples that we're going to examine over here. So this room, as I say, tends to be a relatively dirty facility. We also expand outside, so this is an exterior door, and we've got various other equipment in a series of storage sheds outside, and we might also carry out some of our processing of sediments outside as well. So we're going to move through from this dirty area into the clean parts of our laboratories, and we're going to go into our analytical laboratory. So this is our analytical laboratory. So we use this facility for student projects, particularly third-year dissertations. Our research students, so PhD students, they work in here as well, and some staff research is also undertaken in this room. And our consultancy also uses this to carry out particularly specialist analytical work. So we are extremely well equipped to carry out sedimentological and soil science type work, which is an integral part of both archaeology but also physical geography. And we have a whole series of apparatus that enable us to do that, from the very simple, such as sieves, etc., that you can see laid out on the desk, but also in terms of some of the equipment we've got at the rear of the room. So, for example, the blue apparatus is a calcimeter, measures the calcium carbonate content of sediments, and then this device here is a laser granulometer, so it very accurately measures the grain size of sediment and soil samples. And we've got a fume cupboard here in which we can carry out some wet chemistry processes in a sort of relatively hazard-free environment. So most students won't be taught in this room, but if they carry out projects, particularly in the second and third year, they might spend a lot of time working here. And that applies to all three of the sort of program families that we run. So it's open to all of them, as well as the forensics program as well. Okay, we're going to move through into a teaching area, which will be a space that would become much more familiar to you as an undergraduate student, in that you would certainly be taught in the next room. Okay, let's go through. So this is one of our two teaching laboratories. So this is the dirtier of the two, if we want to use these terms. And what we teach here is, we would teach, for example, human bioarchaeology. So we've got a skeleton laid out in this central table. So this skeleton is a plastic replica, it's not real. We do have real skeletons stored on site that we use for teaching as well. But for introductory teaching, we use replicas. And then on the far table, we have a whole series of casts of relatively well-known fossils that we use in teaching first-year archaeology and biological anthropology. So if, just to take as an example, we have a chimpanzee cast, and then as we move to the right, we've got the whole evolutionary transect, if you like, of our own species, from Australopithecines through Homo habilis, Homo agaster, Homo Neanderthalensis, Neanderthal man, and then our own species towards the end. So you would learn about these during the course of your first year in archaeology and first to third years in the case of anthropology. So as I said earlier, no matter which degree you take in our suite of programs, you would end up spending some time in this laboratory, even if it's just learning how laboratory processes work and learning about the most basic of laboratory techniques. Okay, so we're going to move to our last laboratory now, and our last laboratory is directly above my head, so we won't film the entire route, we'll just go up there and we'll have a look around. So let's go in and take a look. Okay, so this is a wet chemistry laboratory, an analytical laboratory. So what we have here is we have a sort of higher specification fume cupboard where we can do most types of wet chemistry analysis. The bulk of the laboratory just comprises benches. You can see the gas taps. And the gas taps we don't use in archaeology, anthropology or geography. They're used for some forensic applications. So we share this laboratory with the Forensic Studies programme. We've also got in those cupboards, you can see to my right, We've got a whole series of microscopes, and we have around about 20 low power and around about the same number of high power microscopes, meaning that we can carry out all sorts of microscopic applications here. And you'll also see how this laboratory is equipped in terms of audio visual. So we've got monitors at various points around the room, and that's because the person who's taking these laboratory classes can stand at the front of the class over to my right, and they can plug in a laboratory and they can show students what they're looking at in the laboratory. So again, how much of this laboratory you see during the course of your studies would depend exactly which course you took. If you took anthropology, biological anthropology, you would definitely spend some time in this room, particularly in your second year. Likewise, if you're doing archaeology and you're focusing on, say, human bioarchaeology, you would spend quite a bit of time here. And there are various geography, physical geography classes that are taught in this laboratory as well. Okay, so a teaching laboratory to end our tour, and the most recent. So thank you for listening, and I hope you found this whistle-stop tour of the laboratory facilities useful.